Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined off the jump by Mr. Denny Carter. We will be joined later in the show by Mr. Kyle Dvorchak to give kind of a recap of the Combine, where every University of Texas player posted a new record 40. And as a producer, Adam pointed out, kind of makes us wonder how they weren't even better last year and why, they needed a negotiated settlement to get into the playoff.
Right.
And so we'll get to the bottom of that. We'll get what's going on with Sark. A lot of non-combine news. Our guy, Mike Florio, was reporting Kirk Cousins house shopping in Atlanta, Georgia.
His wife is from Georgia. No one's talking about this.
No one is talking about this. Georgia is, of course, not in Minnesota, and Kirk could be headed south. Russell Wilson is going to be headed wherever anyone will pay him because our guy's down just hellacious. Hellacious. And if the Falcons are out, where in the world might Russell Wilson sign? Apparently not Pittsburgh, who is claiming they're not interested in Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. We'll talk, man, the Steelers quarterback situation is already the number one topic of the offseason.
It's
that I don't want to talk about. It's yeah, sure.
It's truly, it's mind-boggling that we now know, this early in the process, that they're not reading any of that.
Well, that's at least what they're saying. Danny, a lot of people are saying a lot of things. The Broncos are saying they might start Jarrett Stidham, for instance. We'll get to that. There's a Ty Chandler season after Alexander Mattison's release. Mike Evans is re-upped at the Bucs. Dalton Schultz is re-upped at the Texans. We didn't plan anything to riff about. So should we just talk about football?
So I did want to say, and maybe we could talk about this on Thursday a little bit, but I wrote a piece on whether the Dolphins should re-sign Tua, and I posted it yesterday, and nothing much happened. In fact, I got a lot of nice words.
You were expecting to get hate and you didn't?
Well, I got a lot of nice words from Dolphins fans saying, yeah, we've seen the ceiling of this team with Tua. We know what it is. We need to move on. We shouldn't spend these resources on a quarterback like this, right? And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. But then today, the insecure Dolphins fans found it radical, and they are having a full-blown temper tantrum on the internet about it. And really, I think that tells you everything you need to know about Tua, is the fact that his biggest supporters are the biggest crybaby losers online.
Oh, come on.
No, it's true. They are so deeply insecure about their guy because they know deep down, they know.
Well, Denny, not to get all NBC and everyone, the first wave of people were the people who subscribed to Peacock and watched the Dolphins freeze to death in Arrowhead Stadium. The second group either couldn't sign up or they couldn't get a password or something. They didn't watch the game and they didn't see the end of the Tua era in Arrowhead Stadium in the wild card round, where, as we talked about recently, the Dolphins were defeated before they even stepped foot on the field.
It's not the end, man. He's going to be there for at least 3, maybe 5 more years.
It's going to be one of those trapdoor contracts where it's like, wow, I didn't think Tua would get a $512 million contract. And then Tom Pelissero report the next day, actually only $28 million of it's guaranteed.
Right. And they can cut him without a cap hit in 2025.
Yeah. It's like, wow. Okay. Wow. All right. That's going to be one of the more fascinating contracts of the entire offseason. The most fascinating, Denny, is going to be Kirk Cousins, who he's the everyone hates Kirk Cousins until they need him. The Vikings fans can't decide if this is the Liberation Day or the worst thing that's ever happened to them with Kirk reaching free agency and seeming poised to leave Minnesota. It's not a done deal yet. Of course, he's getting closer to 40 than he is to 30. He's coming off a torn Achilles tendon, but we would like it from a fantasy perspective if he ended up in Atlanta, because he'd have weapons at his disposal, like Mr. Kyle Pitts, like Mr. Drake London, like Mr. Bijan Robinson. I said Liberation Day. Would this constitute a Liberation Day for our Arthur Smith prisoners and Kyle Bijan and Drake London? Or is that maybe overstating what Kirk Cousins can do at this advanced age, off this major injury, in a new system, a place where he's not gotten – in the Viking system is maybe we'll run the ball once.
Right.
The Falcons are not going to be that system.
Well,
what would you make of this potential fit? We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Legal tampering period begins in 6 days. Things could get crazy, but right now it appears Kirk could end up in Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be quite as massively pass heavy as it was with the Vikings, but I think it could be close. I remember how we talked about how anywhere Joe Flacco goes, it's gonna be pass heavy.
That's true.
I do feel like that is the case with Cousins.
There's a movement for that attempts are a quarterback stat too.
Right, and assuming full health, and I've been told that by folks online that I should not assume full health, but I feel like he can get there, and I feel like also the way he plays the game doesn't require a long, extensive recovery.
Oh, yeah. Kirk Cousins had like a Fitbit during the game. At the end of the game, we look at it, like I feel like I moved more than 989 steps.
Yeah. I was gonna say 7 steps.
Yeah,
but so I think that a guy like him can recover because he's not mobile. He's a drop back quarterback. It's the same reason, and I know that there are other factors here we talked about, but it's the same reason Aaron Rodgers had an outside shot at returning. If the Jets
you're gonna believe that all of a sudden you're believing that.
If the Jets had made the postseason, I think that he would have had an outside shot because because all he does is drop back. He doesn't need to be explosive like a running back or a receiver or whatever. So I do think that there's a case to be made that Kirk Cousins will be okay. If not at the start of the season, then shortly thereafter. And it would be a huge boost for Pitts and for London, particularly. If I could share one stat that jumped out, and actually this was shared with me online, but looked it up to verify, and Kirk Cousins had about 10 more catchable pass attempts per game than Desmond Ridder in 2023. 10 more per game. Okay, so we're talking. Obviously, do the math. It comes out to roughly 170 over the course of a season.
Denny, as you know, I will never do the math.
No, you won't. And so you're talking about not only an increase in targets, raw targets for the pass catchers in this Falcons offense, but an increase in good targets, in quality targets. That's something that they have not had. Pat Thorman from Established Run pointed out that only 20% of Kyle Pitts' downfield targets last year were deemed catchable. 20%. Okay.
Surprised it's that high. I'm not even kidding.
It's one of the lowest in the league with tight ends or receivers. So you see a big boost on that of downfield shots, and also hopefully some intermediate stuff for Pitts, which is the thing that's been missing for him in his fantasy profile.
The one thing, so Cousins and his health, he'll be healthy for week 1. Pretty much any position at this point. The Achilles, like the doctors act like Achilles now is like spraining your thumb,
right?
Which I think it's been oversold dramatically. We're still seeing a lot of people struggle mightily after coming back from a torn Achilles tendon. It is far less of a concern for a quarterback. For Aaron Rodgers, by the way, actually does like to move around. Kirk, our guy doesn't even move.
Well, but
Aaron Rodgers did like to move.
I think. So yes, I hear what you're saying about guys still struggling from Achilles. We're talking about Cam Akers, guys like that. But I do think that the way that these guys play the game, the demands of their job, just is obviously worlds different. And I think that Cousins can be okay.
So Cousins he'll be healthy, quote unquote, and playing in week 1. He will also be 36 with a traumatic orthopedic injury. I guess you call it Achilles and orthopedic. You're tearing a huge tendon.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he's a diminished player. And it's kind of like, it's like Tommy John in baseball. It's like the ACL in any sport, where even when you make a full recovery, a lot of times like something ineffable has been lost. And Kirk was playing probably the best football of his entire career last year. And I would not expect that level of play, at least off the jump in Atlanta.
Yeah. And I will say it does seem like Zach Robinson is more into the drop back traditional kind of quarterback. And we'll talk about Fields in a second, but I think that it's looking like Cousins are bust for the Falcons right now.
And it will be interesting to see how similar the system is, the Viking system, because as we know, KOC is a Rams disciple, but his system's a lot different than Sean McVay, where he's not interested in balance at all. Like he was just like, he's Mr. like throw the ball.
But I think that could be a Cousins thing, And
we're hoping that it's a Cousins thing, which does make a lot. This theory is really going to be put to the test with Jim Harbaugh, of course, and Justin Herbert, where a lot of people have been trying to say attempts are a quarterback stat. And which, of course, makes sense to a point. We're going to find out just how much attempts are a quarterback stat with Justin Herbert, though. And we will find out in Atlanta if Kirk Cousins goes. I mean, next Tuesday. Kirk Cousins is on the Texans.
Yeah. A camp battle with Stroud.
Wow, I thought CJ proved himself last year.
It was pretty good.
I wasn't really expecting this, but our Kirk Cousins in Washington, that got floated recently.
Oh man, come on. That couldn't have been real.
Commanders fans, that actually, I would pay good money for that to happen, that psychodrama.
Yeah,
but that cannot happen and will not happen.
No, I mean I can report as someone who lives in Maryland that Washington fans are pretty traumatized over Cousins' success outside of Washington.
They're traumatized by everything that happened with Kirk Cousins. That was the most traumatizing quarterback saga ever.
The Cousins RG3 fiasco is something that will linger for a long time. It still is lingering.
No, really, it sounds like we're saying it's a bit. It's not a bit.
No.
It was a genuine sports fan base trauma that is still lingering. That does deserve a 30 for 30.
Because they thought they had a longtime franchise quarterback in RG3, and then they said, okay, well, we have either a longtime franchise quarterback in RG3 or Cousins, so we're good, and they end up with neither, and the franchise has never recovered. I don't know if they ever will.
They had no idea that Kirk Cousins was so good at business. No one was counting on Kirk Cousins. Whatever, franchise tag you however many times you want, pal.
He really is incredibly good at business.
You can franchise. All I know is the $42 million checks hitting my bank account either way.
If Kirk's listening, I would like some advice in business.
So good at business. Please tell us. We want to be good at business.
How do you do the business?
Kirk, I'll do one business, please.
Please, just tell me how to do just one. I don't need to do a lot.
I'm ordering one. How did you get this number? Russell Wilson, Denny. Does anyone want this guy anymore? They're taking a record dead money hit, the Broncos, by cutting Russell Wilson loose. The play has just been bad for 3 years in a row now, going back to his final year in Seattle. We're like a switch flipped. Was that final Seahawks season? No, that was the final 2 years in Seattle. That switch flipped, I guess, in 2020, where he was amazing the first half of the 2020 season. Far less amazing the second half. Was not good in 2021. Was just bad both Broncos years, which you thought he was good briefly in 2023 until you read the numbers once.
If you strip out garbage time, then it's a different story. I mean, there are some metrics that point to Russell Wilson still being a starter. Okay, like I actually saw Robert Griffin.
That's where we're at now. That he might.
Well, yeah. Speaking of Robert Griffin, he was on my TV this morning, and he was saying Russell Wilson's still a top 20-ish guy, and he was quickly. The disagreement came swift, and they said no, not a top 20 guy. I actually do agree that he's probably top 25 quarterback, and he might be starting somewhere.
I mean, who's in play here? Not the Broncos. The Bucs are probably re-signing Baker Mayfield.
The Vikings. The Vikings.
No, that won't happen. It could be like Giants. It could maybe be the Jets as like a backup. The Raiders, the Steelers, the Titans, the Vikings. I think it really is down to one of those three: the Raiders, Steelers, or Titans. The Steelers right now. I mean, come on with this stuff, man. Just come on. Oh yeah, we love our guys. We're actually going to re-sign Duck Hodges, so we have 4 quarterbacks.
They really do love their guys, though.
I don't know. I don't think they do. Is it Raiders or bust for Russell Wilson? Is that kind of what it comes down to?
Oh yeah, I guess it would be. That wouldn't be so bad. I mean, Aiden O'Connell. You cannot go into the season with Aiden O'Connell as your quarterback.
So you can go in with him as your immediate. If Russ is bad for 3 games, we're starting Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah,
sure. You can do that. You can't go in with Aiden O'Connell as your set.
No, man. No. Really, really a poor, very, very poor season from Aiden O'Connell.
I guess he could sign if you want to go thermo mega nuclear. He could maybe sign with the Commanders or Patriots as a bridge quarterback. To I actually just had visions of Russell Wilson ending up as a mentor to Drake May in Washington, and it being the most toxic situation imaginable.
Can you imagine having Russell Wilson as your mentor? You're just begging him to speak normally to you once. Yeah,
so have you devoted any thought to where he might end up or not really?
I mean, I actually think that the Commanders or the Patriots are a good guess.
I think. Well,
I do think that I really do think the Vikings are in play if they lose Cousins, obviously.
And our free agency primer, which we are hoping to drop on Thursday, but it is Tuesday, and my word count is a little low right now.
As in less than one.
And Sarah, yeah, Sarah. That was just, of course, the Spanish for zero. We are at Sarah, Denny. Although I do have it outlined. I'm going to put his best fit as the Raiders. I feel like it is Raiders or bust for Russell Wilson for a variety of reasons. Because he wanted to go there last time for some reason. They really, really need a quarterback. It's kind of a situation where he can be a bridge. The whole Raiders thing is like totally in flux. Like there's not a more in flux organization in the league right now. I feel like they're not quite. They're not a true contender. They're not quite at blow it up level.
No.
They are really in between. And or I feel like they can kind of be the team to find out if Russ has anything left whatsoever.
You know, my favorite thing, my favorite term that I actually heard today for the first time, it's now my favorite, is a competitive rebuild. I mean, I get it. Like I do understand that for these teams, for the front offices, you can't sell to the fan base, and you really can't sell to most owners that you're going to tear it down and you're going to be really bad for a couple of years. You can't sell that. So you have to say, well, we're going to stay competitive. But by staying competitive, you're not giving up the resources needed to collect crucial long-term resources. And so that's where the Raiders are. And I'm pretty sure that's where the Raiders will always be.
I will say, I think modern sports need to be restructured in a way to disincentivize tanking because it is a crisis. Teams are now beginning to tank in the NFL. They never really used to do it. The Browns, of course, famously tanked. I think all rebuilds should be competitive. I do hate tanking. Under the current systems, though, you have to tank. Like you said, you just you're screwed if you do not tank. You must tank. But I wish competitive rebuild would become like a reality.
Yeah,
it's just 3 or 4 years your team's not even competing.
But it's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You know, exactly. and that doesn't work. I mean,
it could work though if it has to be that way. You know, like I don't know how you would make it.
I have no idea how you do. But like a team like the Raiders, they're going to be in purgatory for the foreseeable future. Where if they really committed to tearing it down, to trading Devontae Adams, to getting rid of pretty much all of the Max Crosby, everybody, and collecting draft picks, saving cap money, all that stuff that can long term build a team. They would do it, but now they're just going to be average, if that average at best for years.
They 1 trillion% should do that under the current economic model of the NFL. I guess the NFL has a fairly serious cap floor, which baseball probably needs to look into, but we desperately do not want a salary cap in baseball. So that's one reason why we can't have a cap floor in baseball, Denny. This is more for personal fandom reasons, but
I get it.
Also, for personal reasons, we need to take a quick break. We'll be back after this. Spring training is here, so for those looking to get ahead on the upcoming MLB season, grab your Rotoworld Baseball Draft Guide. It's loaded with comprehensive positional rankings, projections, and player profiles to ensure your draft is a success. Visit NBCSports.com/draft guide and use promo code BASEBALL24 to get 10% off at checkout. I see Denny smiling because – I can't say success in that context. I just can't say it.
I wasn't even gonna call you out.
We got to reword this promo, Adam. I'm dying. I'm absolutely dying.
I'm begging you.
I'm dying out here. Then I put Lowell, the Athletics, Mike DeFabo, reports the Steelers not interested in acquiring Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Just more of the Steelers are happy. Jeremy Fowler said the sentiment among many, quote unquote, is that Kenny Pickett could get another chance. Fowler also reported that after asking around, the Falcons, Steelers, Raiders, and Vikings could all be on the radar as potential trade suitors for Justin Fields. We've talked about this so much. I feel like there's literally nothing. I don't even have a question. What do you have to say about the Steelers and Justin Fields?
I mean, I think that, Omar Khan, the general manager of the Steelers, coming out and saying, saying to reporters, yes, we're going to explore all our options and we have full faith in Kenny Pickett. I don't think the first part matters after the second part is said, because the second part is what matters. If you really do have full faith that Kenny Pickett can operate and be viable in the Arthur Smith offense, then you're going to go in that direction and you're going to give it one more shot. I mean, do I think that's a great idea? No. And they're trying to re-sign Mason Rudolph, and there's really no reason to think that Mason Rudolph wouldn't end up with the job anyway, and I mean, Mason Rudolph's numbers, I hate to report it.
You do it because you shouldn't be.
I'm telling you that they were good. They were good.
They were better than Kenny Pickett.
No. He led. What
did he lead in? Are you going to tell me Mason Rudolph led in something?
He led in several metrics. The most important one, he led the entire league by a comfortable margin in completion rate over expected.
I thought you were going to say like something a lot more fake than that.
No, it's real. It was a real thing. He was good. He wasn't asked to do much, but he was way better than Pickett. Okay, way better.
Man, he seriously led in completion rate over expected. That's bad news.
Over the stretch, however many games.
It was 3 games, but it was 3 games.
Did he start 3 games? I thought he started like 5. Oh well.
It was 4 if you count the playoffs, I believe. I think he subbed in maybe at the end of one of them. But yeah they're gonna do it, aren't they?
Yeah,
because Art Smith, all Art Smith ever does is tell people, I can fix. Like, we don't even need a quarterback.
Right.
The whole time I'm like, we don't need a quarterback.
I actually think that the Steelers are just chasing the Tannehill model from Arthur Smith's time with the Titans. They're saying, can you do for Pickett what you did with Tannehill? And obviously the answer is yeah, definitely I can do that. We'll see. I mean, Tannehill was good that one season, 2019, whatever it was. He was very, very efficient, super efficient on low volume. Maybe they can get something out of Pickett. Not quite like that, but something like that.
Do you buy that Justin Fields doesn't have a market? I've already seen this classic. Oh, fantasy guys love him. Guess who doesn't? Anyone who matters.
That's right. And I get that. And I that actually makes a lot of sense to me, Pat. I mean,
it actually doesn't make sense to me. I feel like he's more of a football guy than like a true fantasy guy.
No. He's fantasy and bio guy.
I mean, he is and he isn't, because he's fantasy and bio in terms of how he produces his fantasy numbers. Like, in terms of like a football guy, he's got like a lot of moxie and heart, and he takes hits and he stands and delivers big plays. So I kind of feel like football guys probably love him too.
I mean, look, I don't know how we measure this, but I tend to think that the nerds like his rushing, and nobody else sees much about his game that they like. I mean, his passing
might be true.
His passing is not good. It's just simply not good, and he didn't show any improvement last year. So I don't know what teams would latch onto. I wouldn't be surprised if Fields ends up having to try, scrap for a starting job in the summer.
Speaking of fantasy and bio, we have Kyle Dvorchak begging to be tapped into the podcast early.
He wants tapped in.
Screw you! Put me back out of the show.
What do you have to say about the ultimate fantasy and bio player? Apparently, Justin Fields. Kyle, is he is Fields a fantasy and bio guy, or is he a football guy's guy?
That's a good way to put it. He's definitely a fantasy and bio guy.
Yeah, he is. You're right. It's actually been a long time since there was a bigger fantasy and bio
right
than Justin Fields.
Yes, absolutely. You know who was the last fantasy and bio guy who I can remember like to that extent is Stafford in Detroit.
Yeah, it's true.
He was fantasy bio guy. Nobody wanted anything to do with him, but he was throwing for 400 yards and 1 touchdown a game.
It's true. Yeah, he had 5,000 yards and 22 touchdowns. It's like not even a joke. That was one year. I think he literally did that. Kyle's too young to remember the fantasy and bio.
Well, because I assume that was also the Calvin Johnson 1,900-yard year, and he scored like 6 touchdowns in that season. I think I have to look it up, but so that would make sense that those were the same year.
Do you really think though he can't even get a 2nd-round pick, Justin Fields? Like, I'm starting to see this. Like, you seriously, the guy's not going to get a 2nd-round pick?
No, I actually would agree that I think like maybe it ends up being like 2/3 or a conditional 2-3 based on playing time and another third. But like I would bet on whatever like trade chart you're using, they get the equivalent of a pick in the 2nd round. Maybe it's a late pick in the 2nd round, but a 2nd-round pick. I actually do think that's correct. That's mostly because he was a 1st-round quarterback who's like flashed some interesting stuff, and quarterback is a very important position.
My guess was that to steal my own line that I used on Around the NFL last week is I said he would get a gentleman's 1st rounder, which is 2 2nd-round picks.
I actually think he's more likely. That was a good line. You texted me that. I think he's more likely to get a gentleman's second rounder.
So you think it's 2/3?
2/3
second rounder.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I need more. I need to speak in more concrete ways. We can't say gentleman's first round.
No, it makes perfect sense as a concept. The fan base
I like it. I really like it.
lose their bleep if you traded a first round pick. So you gave over the old gentleman's first rounder to second rounder. I actually think gentleman's second rounder does make more sense though. It's going to be a second and a third. It's going to be a second and a conditional third that turns into a fourth. That's what he's going to get.
Oh, mine is conditional second and a third, like a pure third. And then if he starts 10 games, a second third flips to a second.
That's a true gentleman's second rounder, actually. Kyle, do you think, by the way, with Fields, he's not getting any love in Atlanta because Kirk Cousins is taking up all the rumor energy there. Like, are they seriously not going to pursue Justin Fields if they don't get Kirk? I mean, this is like so theoretical. It's barely worth talking about.
I mean, I would be surprised if they get Fields at this point. They've talked up a lot of the type of quarterback they want, and it's like at best, if it's the veteran market, it's like the bland journeyman like Kirk, and if not, it's almost certainly a rookie. So
where do we even think this guy goes then? If it's Cousins in Atlanta, I kind of think Russell Wilson's Vegas. But Kyle, where do you think?
Well, Vegas was going to be my Fields
spot.
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense too. Actually, it's going to be Russell or Fields in Vegas. I think almost you could take that to the bank. I go to the bank every day. By the way, I take things all the time to the bank. Where did that even come from?
Why aren't we talking about Fields to the Giants? This makes sense.
That actually does make a lot of sense.
I mean,
I think a lot of sense.
They would have to then, though, because he's on his final year of his 4 years of his rookie, and then they're cutting Daniel Jones with not a ton of dead cap. I think it's like $20 million next year. So they're dedicating a lot of money to a lot of suspect quarterback play.
Well, that's if they don't do the fifth-year team option for Fields. So
that does jump the price of the contract, though. The 5th year is more expensive than a lot by the first 4 years.
I feel like if the Giants got Fields, there's like no way they could do the 5th-year team option, which would make him like a far less valuable trade acquisition.
Totally,
one of the reasons
if you
can't
get
him.
Yeah. One of the reasons the 5th-year option is more expensive than the first 4 years. It's still very cheap compared to what high-end quarterback play goes for. So yeah, I think it's almost certainly you have to pick up his 5th-year option if you're trading for him, which means you have to have some financial flexibility in the next year or so.
And our guy would have gone to the Titans if they hadn't fired Mike Vrabel. That would have been a good.
Yeah.
The Titans should be in on Fields. I mean, Levis is not by any means a slam dunk. I mean, my guy, I would think that the team would try to hedge its bets with Levis as much as possible.
Between Will Levis, Malik Willis, and Justin Fields, someone's going to complete a pass at some point in this game. Someone will complete a pass.
Maybe.
By the way, the fantasy and bio season, by the way, the 2012 Matthew Stafford season, he led the league in completions and attempts, completed under 60% of his throws, had 4,967 yards and only 20 touchdowns.
I remember that. Do you have the game log pulled up for that from that season? Because he played a game against Arizona that was like the biggest abomination I've ever seen statistically.
He's 24 of 50 for 246 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
That's it.
50 attempts for 246.
38-10 loss to the Cardinals.
So I had him in my home league or whatever.
I had him everywhere that year. I had him literally everywhere.
And I actually think I remember that. I remember us tilting our faces off together about that. But so that was the most painful game I've watched as a fantasy manager.
He was easily outdueled by Ryan Lindley.
Oh,
was 14 of 21 for 104 yards. And the Lions lost by 4 touchdowns. We truly digress, though. I mean, do we need to talk about Jarrett Stidham? I probably should just remove this from the show sheet because a rap sheet saying that Jarrett Stidham could be the starting quarterback if they don't trade ever.
If they don't get somebody in the draft, which they will. So
exactly, or they will sign somebody.
Or he'll start for 2 games and then like somehow Jacoby Brissett starts over him or whatever.
That's exactly a rap sheet said Brissett is a good candidate to land there. Yeah.
Sean Payton did sign Jarrett Stidham suspiciously quickly in free agency last year. I will say,
to a good backup contract.
Free agency, of course, begins like Wednesday afternoon. I think it was like Monday evening. He had like already signed Jarrett Stidham. Oh wow, that seems a little desperate. No,
I think Jarrett Stidham's maybe a good bet to start more than 0 games this coming year because they're also a decent spot to land not one of the best rookies, at which point, like, JJ McCarthy sits 4 games, you find out Jarrett Stidham is as bad as you think, and then McCarthy plays. So, like, he could play games. I just, like, what would be the point and how many?
What would be the point? Jerry Jeudy and who's the other guy? Cortland Sutton. Those going to be on this team next year still.
I think so.
Jerry Judy's been on the trade block since like before he got drafted.
Yeah.
Like, are they ever going to trade this guy, or are they seriously running it back with Jerry Jeudy?
I think they're running it back.
Wow, this team, you guys want a team in hell, man. Just like totally in it. Patrick Mahomes, Jim Harbaugh. Like, give me a break, man. This team is so screwed. Like,
did you see that the biggest cap hit of all time, unsurprisingly, is Russell Wilson, and then the third biggest cap hit of all time is Russell Wilson because it's his upcoming 2024 cap hit and his upcoming, like, the most dead cap hit is
dead cap
2024.
You know who's looming on the horizon to break the record, right?
It's got to be Deshaun.
Deshaun Watson's
going
to have like $120 million dead cap hit if they cut him next year.
Yeah, I think Matt Ryan holds that number 2 spot when it lands.
He does.
Get rid of him. But then Russell Wilson shows back up at 3rd for his 2025 hit.
Oh my God.
That's hellish. That is truly hellish. But the good thing is they have no backwards pipeline of young talent because they spent it all on a coach and the quarterback who is killing their cap space for the next 2 years.
Sean Payton could have spent the rest of his life deep sea fishing in the Gulf of Mexico.
Now he is swimming with the fishes.
No, a guy like that's never
a
guy like that's never satisfied with retirement. Come on.
Jimmy Johnson pieced out and spent 30 years just fishing like near Key West.
But I've read that Sean Payton is the most competitive man alive. So I think that
he didn't even know anyone's name the year he's retired. Yeah, the guy.
No, I know.
Terry Bradshaw's like, you mean Aaron Rodgers?
It's not necessarily that he knows players. It's just that
he's so competitive he doesn't need to know the players. That's how competitive he is.
I mean, Sean Payton clearly doesn't really know a lot of players because he keeps signing the guys he coached in New Orleans in 2020.
Yep.
I buy the competitive things. He did give up 70 points once, and he did the controller lean forward in his chair.
Yeah,
they allowed like 19 points the rest of the season.
They were good after that. Yeah,
they didn't score any points, but is it Ty Chandler season after Alexander Madison's release? This seems like the ultimate fantasy football Lucy with the football.
Yeah.
We like Ty Chandler, but this just seems like we should get a speed run. I feel like Ty Chandler being one of the biggest busts of the year. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's right. We're back to the Madison situation, right? So after Dalvin Cook was released, or however that went down, it was, Madison's in line for a bunch of touches. You got to draft him everywhere. The most obvious bust in recent fantasy memory. Okay. And and that's going to happen here. There you go. That's you heard it here in early March, folks. Do not buy into that Ty Chandler stuff.
Well, is Ty Chandler better than Alexander Mattison was though last year? I feel like
he is better. I mean, per the numbers, he is better, but I refuse to just say the next guy up is the guy I want no matter what. Like there's a point where you're sacrificing quality for quantity, and you just gotta stop doing it.
Also, the next guy up is the guy I want no matter what is great when he's a 16th round pick.
Yeah.
And you're like, if he's the next guy up, he stumbles into 17 touches for a bunch of weeks. It's not a very fun proposition when you have to pay a really high draft spot that could be a wide receiver. It could be an elite quarterback. And it's to get the talent level of Ty Chandler, who isn't bad, but he was negative rush yards over expected, modest success rate last year. Totally just a guy. And I don't want to pay a lot for just a guy.
He also turns 26 in May. I don't know how this is real. He is quite old for a third year pro. I think the Ty Chandler thing won't get out of hand because the Vikings will draft someone with reasonably good capital, like probably the 4th or 5th round. And there's no way Ty Chandler is going to be like the set and forget Vikings starter. The free agent running back market, we do say this almost every year. It's like as deep as it's ever been too. I would not be surprised if the Vikings add meaningful competition before it can get too out of hand with Ty Chandler.
They will add meaningful competition. It'll sink Ty Chandler's fantasy prospects.
Anybody have any thoughts on Mike Evans returning to the Bucs? It's hard to say much about this. Do we know who the quarterback's going to be? It certainly seems
it's going to be Baker. I'd take like 80% odds that it's Baker.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're in. They hired a new offensive coordinator that worked with Baker when he was
Liam Cohen, who was in who was
LA.
the guy who was
the guy cannot make up his mind about whether or not he likes Kentucky or not.
Well, I think he supposedly didn't like the lack of control he had on the offense in LA, which, like, you know what you're getting into, buddy. So then he goes back to Kentucky, then back to the NFL.
I do want to mention just quickly about Mike Evans. His air yard domination really dropped off in the final 6 weeks of the regular season.
That's because he got 1,000 yards. Who cares after that?
Yeah, that's actually not a bad point. This was after the Chris Godwin squeaky wheel situation, and so that really did ding Mike Evans down the stretch. I'm sure if you draft him in fantasy, you noticed that those 30-point outings turned into 6-point outings, and that was not fun. It's just something to know if that carries over. If that sort of boom bust profile carries over, it's not going to be as fun as it was early in the season with Baker chucking it downfield to Evans.
Yeah, it would be hard to miss the lack of the points. It's very, very, very difficult to miss. Before we get into the combine, Dalton Schultz. I'm got a deal. 3 years, $36 million, re-signing with the Texans. In case you don't know, sorry, I'm talking as if people will know what we're
talking. Right. I'm
sure having a stroke. He just said Dalton Schultz out of nowhere.
Denny's response to that was great too. He was like, yeah.
Dalton Schultz was having a medical episode. Like, wow. Dalton Schultz back to the Texans, 3 years. Kyle, this is going to be the ultimate funny money deal, by the way. $36 million. Give me an absolute break. It's like 6 or 7 million guaranteed, probably. Like the most ridiculous funny money contract of the spring so far. It's back to the Texans, though. He was never like a featured part of this game plan last year. Can he do enough to maintain low-end tight end one relevance? Let's say that.
Go ahead, Kyle.
You seem really fired up about it, and
Sorry.
I felt like your response was just like, he's fine. He's a perfectly competent NFL tight end, and he's playing with one of the league's best young ascending talents, and that's going to put them in position to score a lot. He's probably not going to dominate targets because they have 2 elite wide receivers, but like, could it get him to low end tight end 1? Absolutely. I think it's probably more likely to get him to like tight end 9 or 8, because after the first 4 to 5 tight ends, difference between like 7 and 16 isn't that much. And I think he falls at the higher end of this guy could be tight end 1 level rankings.
Dalton Schultz was top 10 in pass routes among tight ends, in targets, and in yards per route run. Before he got banged up late in the season. So I just cut it off at week 11. And, he's fine. And you can definitely draft him if you are going the late round tight end route.
He does miss like 2 or 3 games a year with the injury. And our guy's got to be like close to 30 at this point. I won't be. I was the guy every year. I drafted Dalton Schultz like 3 or 4 years in a row.
He makes sense. It makes sense. Hopefully we can get more, steady passing from the Texans offense in CJ Stroud's second year. None of this established the run stuff that they toyed with in 2023.
And Dalton Schultz is only 27, according to producer Adam. That seems Dalton Schultz is 1 year older than Ty Chandler. Man, we used to be a country.
I have no idea the connection between the no connection.
Like, is that good? Is that bad? How many years has Schultz been? So he had a rookie, which is 4, and then 1 more. So he's gonna be.
He's going on his 7th year in the league, and he's 1 year older.
Schultz is going on his 7th year in the league. Oh, okay, good for him.
2018 is when our guy started playing NFL football, and 1 year older than Ty Chandler. We will be 1 year older worst segue of the year. We'll be right back after this. Let the madness begin. We are in conference tournament season, and Peacock is your exclusive home for Big Ten hoops. This Wednesday, you can start streaming the TIAA Big Ten Women's Tournament, and next week on the 13th, it's the men's turn to get the action started. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows and Amazon Music. Just head to Amazon.com/NBC Sports. Kyle, the only guy here. I was going to say Kyle's the only guy who went to a Big Ten school, and then Maryland's in the Big Ten. So.
But come on, not really.
Were they in the Big Ten when you went?
No, man.
No, they were in the
There's
ACC.
no way.
They were in the ACC. That's where they still are in our hearts.
I will never acknowledge that, except for when I watch them on Peacock.
So Kyle is probably really excited about watching his Ohio State men's team that fired their coach like 2 weeks ago. So they're having a good year.
Did they?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah,
I heard about that through you, Pat. I wasn't happy.
I probably brought it up on like 4 different podcasts. Hey, Kyle says he claims he went to Ohio State, yet he doesn't even know they fired their coach. And you're like, yeah, I don't know.
We're not a basketball school, man. We gave up on that hope a while ago.
Hey, you're not a football school either.
I know. I was waiting for you to say it.
And JJ McCarthy, who owned your soul the past 2 years, now JJ McCarthy is looking to own everyone's soul after he checked in a surprisingly large, in Kyle's words, 6'3", 219 pounds at the combine. You guys were worried last week JJ McCarthy was going to weigh like 200, 205 pounds, Kyle. He's around 220, though. What, if anything, does this do for his draft stock and immediate NFL prognostication?
Yeah, this is really strong showing from it. And I will say it's not like complete nonsense weight he packed on for the combine, because he did the agility drills. He actually had really strong numbers in the agility drills as well. Typically when I see a guy come in over, I'm like, oh, I don't know if he's going to be like NFL BMI level size, and he comes in over, either he doesn't do as well in the drills or he doesn't do the drills. And I say, like, I see what you're doing. You put on weight.
It was McFlurry season just to get the weight up.
It was McFlurry season. You get the
work.
weight up, and then you run your drills at your pro day when you've cut the weight back off. Not exactly what McCarthy did. He didn't do, I think he just did the agility drills, but like did really well in them. So I think this is legit close to his playing weight. I bet he still had a few McFlurries, but he was able to successfully really crush the agility drills. And I think he's pretty much locked in for like top 11. I think there's a team at 11. Maybe it's like Minnesota or something. Top 11 draft capital. And most of those teams, I think he's starting most games for his rookie season. Like, sure, he sits behind some like lame duck veteran for 2 games, like Jacoby Brissett for 2 or 3 games. But I think at this point, the median projection for him is like 13 to 14 games played as a rookie. So if you're doing early best ball, or if you're just drafting, your dynasty teams, you can expect to have him for, I think, most of the year. I think the only spot that he'd be unlikely to get like a dozen games would be the Giants, because they seem amicable to moving on from Daniel Jones, understandably so. And I do think Jones could probably hold off McCarthy for like 8+ weeks, maybe.
Danny is the biggest sadness and regret contract in recent NFL history, maybe of all time. They are gonna.
It could be.
But JJ McCarthy strikes me as the kind of quarterback prospect. I know he literally just won a national championship. He's been in the playoff back-to-back years. He seems like someone who would really benefit from sitting for a year to me. Is that incorrect? Maybe because I guess he does the little things well, but I feel like he would need some seasoning on the big things, like throwing down the field more. I don't know. That's actually, I started doubting my own thesis as I said that. I feel like there's a lot of questions about JJ McCarthy. He seems like a very bright guy. He's got a lot of tools, but that he would maybe have a better chance for long-term success if he sat in 2024.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, maybe if he's not rushed into it, that might be best. But I do think that he could be put into a similar role that he had at Michigan and do quite well for himself in the NFL. A game manager plus, a guy who can scramble, who can get out of tough situations, who can create out of structure, but can also, dink and dunk an offense down the field and not make crucial mistakes. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. Like he was elite. He was considered elite. He happened to go to a head coach who had no interest in gaining yards via the pass. And that was tough for his statistical profile, but I do think that he could be good.
Yeah, if he escapes the 6, 7, 8 zone, which is the Giants, Titans, Falcons, he's going to go there, isn't he, Kyle? There's no way he's getting out of the top 8, I don't think.
I think the only team inside the top 8 that would really strongly consider taking him is the Giants, though I do think any of the teams 8 through like 12, if they want him, they probably feel compelled to move up to get him, which I think would be understandable. I think think about a team like the Falcons with now what seems like very forward-thinking coaching staff, and what we believe to be is very talented players who've been misused for like 2 or 3 years. Drop him into that system right away. I think he actually does fine. I do think there are teams that maybe he would struggle if he got dropped in and just had to make do on his own without a ton of talent. Maybe he doesn't succeed where other players would right away. But Falcons is a good landing spot for a quarterback.
The Vikings at 11 or the Broncos at 12. Well, the Broncos can't trade up, though. They don't have any capital left. I could see the Vikings trading up for J.J. McCarthy.
I think McCarthy, the steam will be such that McCarthy will go in the top 8.
I think he will for sure go in the top 8. But Kyle's right. It might not be someone who's currently in the top 8.
Yeah, right.
Because, boy, I just thought of the Saints didn't have so much invested in Derek Carr. I could see them being a trade-up guy for J.J. McCarthy. The Seahawks at 16 can be a trade-up for J.J. McCarthy. Maybe the Rams at 19. The Rams hate having first-round picks.
The Panthers could use them. I know that.
Yikes.
Not is that too much?
Too soon. Wait, listen, that's the kind of thing we all know that. You're just not supposed to say it. There's been a director from NBC. Just don't say it on the pod. Like everyone in the entire company knows this guy's a bust.
All right.
You're not supposed to say that.
I did find a new stat on Pro Football Reference today. Maybe you guys are familiar. Bad throw rate. Have you seen this?
So what does that mean? Is it throws that are bad or something?
Throws that are bad. And you'll never guess who had the highest, by far the highest rate of bad throws last year.
I thought you were going to say ever.
No, last year Bryce Young.
Well, did you look at ever? It could also be ever.
It could be ever. I know I didn't look at ever. And Trevor Lawrence was right there, by the way.
Wow, man, you are Denny. It's just he's been waiting for years for Trevor Lawrence to be back.
I'm being very patient. And
you have been patiently waiting.
I'm waiting for my apologies, and they're coming.
Would McFlurry season even help Bryce Young, by the way, if he McFlurried, or doesn't even matter?
No, like I don't think it's his weight that's been an issue. Like he's been making a bunch of poor decisions in the NFL in terms of like his game to game consistency. Maybe like, can you stand on the McFlurries for height? Otherwise,
man, goodness gracious,
it's too real. That's the thing. You can't make the height jokes because they're just way too real. It's the reason he can't operate as an NFL quarterback. I'm telling you. And people who are like brushing off the fact that like Caleb, no one knows how tall Caleb Williams is. I don't know what are they thinking. What are you doing?
It's because you look at him and you know that he's tall enough. That's why.
All right,
our guy's tall.
So
he's tall.
He's tall enough. He's tall enough.
He's like in that. He's not under 6 foot. I feel confident saying that.
I agree with that.
He's 6'1", I think. I think he's 6'1".
Okay. It would, I mean, if there was a way we can confirm that would be great. And the fact that he comps himself to Aaron Rodgers, that's not right. Aaron Rodgers is not 6 foot.
Aaron Rodgers is 6'2". He's no more than 6'2", though.
I can see him comping himself
after popping his Achilles, by the way.
I could see him comping himself play-wise to Aaron Rodgers, especially like the real spry, like first run of MVP Rodgers when like he was kind of playing pretty fast and loose in a way that was like super fun. And that like he was more athletic than you would think by just like looking at him. Same with Caleb. Like Caleb plays fast and loose with it and it works.
So hold on, Denny, you let me believe he didn't measure. He did measure that he's 6'1".
I was afraid to say something. I was a little concerned that I had it wrong.
Yeah,
did he measure? Because they asked him how tall are you, and he was like, I don't know.
He's 6'1". That's he's tall enough.
All right, good.
I was pretty sure he was 6'1", and I was afraid to say something. I was like, oh, I'm wrong. Yeah, producer Adam says he was 6'1", 214.
He's 6'1". Okay. If only there was some way we could find out, and if only we had just done that last.
I'm just saying he did a press conference.
If only there was an event at which they figured such a thing out.
They said, how tall are you? And he said, I've never been asked that. I'm not kidding. He said, I've never been asked that question about my size. I think I'm 6'1".
It is right. He might it might not have been a bit because he knows he's big enough. He's just big enough. He's like just big enough.
I'm a little concerned.
He's just big enough. He's just big enough.
Okay.
He looked a little short on that Dr. Pepper commercial. Where he's like walking towards the vortex. You guys remember this one?
Oh yeah.
I don't think I saw this one.
That's an off-putting commercial, by the way. I didn't like that.
Oh, the one where he goes into the transfer portal. Or no?
No, everything's getting sucked into the portal. He's like walking towards it. I don't know.
Oh yeah, and the fans begging him to not walk toward the portal.
Yeah. That was an off-putting commercial.
This
Florida
sounds
State.
depressing.
Florida State running back Kyle Trey Benson blazed under 4.4 on the 40, 216 pounds, mammoth relative athletic score 9.77 out of 10.0. What do you have to say about Mr. Trey Benson? I take it you believe he improved his stock at the combine.
Yeah, this is a terrible running back class if you haven't been tuned in that we have no one who is really within earshot of being a first round pick. Like, I don't think we, frankly, maybe have anyone who could be a top 50-ish pick. But if someone's going to push for it, it's either Texas Jonathan Brooks, who's recovering from a torn ACL. Hilariously, he's like convinced he'll be ready in July, and he tore it, I think, at the beginning of November. It's better than him saying, I'm not going to be ready at the start of training camp. I love the optimism. We appreciate it. I also call BS. It's either going to be him to me or Trey Benson, who I thought there was and I still kind of think there's a gap between Benson and Brooks heading into the NFL. But now with that level of athleticism, it's going to boost his draft capital. And if it's going to boost his draft capital, it gives him a really good shot at not only being like Brooks, I don't think is going to be active week 1. I think he'll be good when he's ready. But not only gives him a good shot at being relevant in week 1, but frankly being a starter in week 1. And in a class that was so wide open, and we had players who, specifically one, and Audric Estime, who bombed the combine, it's very wide open. Yeah, he ran a 4.7 140.
Denny's in shambles, like absolute shambles, actually, at that.
Yeah, if Estime ran a 4.5 flat at his size and with his production, I was ready to be like, oh, maybe he's the RB2, maybe he's the RB1. And he ran a 4.71. So I've
decided that the 40 doesn't matter.
Okay, well, that's
Our guy posting Keenan Allen numbers like 9 years after Keenan Allen came in the league.
Listen, I'm not fantasy in bio. I've watched the games. I can see he has game speed.
He's got game speed.
Okay.
His game speed and 40 speed is Mr. Xavier Worthy, Kyle, who was already a big time prospect. 4.21 for it. I mean, blinding. Was it the fastest 40 ever?
Yes. I think it was
blinding 40. Mr. Xavier Worthy. What does this do to his draft stock?
Yeah, he was being mocked. He's actually being mocked like consistently, not consistently, but if he was going in the first round, a lot of people were throwing him 32 to the Chiefs. Kind of makes sense what they're doing right now. I felt like he was maybe 30-40% to be in the first round. He is a really strong prospect, a 30+% dominator as a true freshman. His numbers slightly went down throughout his career, but he's going to be a 3-year declare true freshman breakout out of a Power 5 school. Those are really strong indicators. And boy, if you were following the combine, like actual like hour to hour level, this was a roller coaster. He weighs in at 165 and I believe 5'11. That is tiny. And not only BMI wise tiny, but just weight wise, it's basically like there's almost no one. Tank Dell most recently also didn't finish his rookie season, which for a small guy immediately doesn't finish.
I was going to say it wasn't a small guy injury, but it was. Everyone's like, how could you have Tank Dell blocking? I'm like, I don't know. It's the NFL.
Yeah, that's true, Pat. I was going to say, no, it didn't have to do with his size, but it definitely had to do with
it. But let's give him credit. Let's say Tank Dell, like true breakout, he totally would have been, and arguably even still true breakout at well under 170. He's like the only one. And a lot of these guys, I'll say, have come in light and put on weight. And he does have the frame at 5'11 to do so. But I was concerned. I was like almost ready to just be out on him. And of course, he runs the fastest 40-yard dash ever. Not even that tight of a race. I think the record's either 4.24 or 4.26.
It was 4.24, I believe.
Yeah. And he obviously crushes that. Totally puts him back into the first round conversation. And I do think part of my concern for a guy who is as small as he is not purely the size. It's how the NFL views that size. Most of the guys who come into the league at sub 170, they don't get drafted in the first round. They don't get drafted in the second round even. There's very few examples that get drafted. We know draft capital matters for a number of reasons. One, it's a good indicator of talent. But two, you get more opportunities if you were drafted higher. I was worried that, a 165-pound guy runs a 4.34. The NFL doesn't care too much. He goes at the end of the third or whatever. I think he's a decent bet, 60-40 to go in the first round. And he was a really strong prospect, size aside. We're praying for the Chiefs, but honestly, might go before that.
this guy's 5'11". He has no excuse to not get up to 180. Like, you
Well,
got
his excuse, to be clear, his excuse is I want to set the record for 40.
All right, yeah. So he was just delaying McFlurry season, basically.
Maybe, yeah.
So it's going to be McFlurry season for Xavier Worthy between now and then. 5'11", 180, you're still skinny, man. Let's like,
I know,
get up to 180, Xavier, please. Or Xavier, I don't know how he says it. His teammate Adonai, how do you say Adonai, by the way, Kyle?
I believe it's Adonai, but everyone calls him AD, so I have never tried to not call him AD Mitchell.
A.D. Mitchell from the University of Texas played with Xavier Worthy for several seasons. 4.35 40, just absolutely mammoth. This guy's 6'2" and running a 4.35. His relative athletic score almost off the charts at 9.98. Kyle, how high is too high now for A.D. Mitchell?
I think I actually had them. I still think I'm going to have Worthy ahead of A.D. Mitchell based on the true freshman breakout, whereas A.D. Mitchell, on the other hand, played, I believe, 2 years at Georgia, then transfers to Texas, but does top a 30% dominator, which is basically half of your team's. It's a split measure of your team's market share touchdowns, market share yards. Guys who see a lot of their team's passing production, they're generally very good. Mm-hmm. He did it while playing with maybe another first-round talent. His first year on the team, immediately leaves a school that wasn't, I don't want to say wasn't willing to use him, but they didn't use him, frankly, and breaks out. Power 5 breakout, declares after 3 years, crushes the combine, probably getting mocked consistently in the first round, and played with another NFL talent at Texas. I think he's probably a relatively safe bet to go inside the top 26 picks. I think if you set a line for me right now, it's 25.5 probably.
Is Georgia ever going to get a real quarterback? Like the early Saban dynasty where they just keep winning. They don't even have a real quarterback.
I know. I was like, they got to have some real quarterback. No.
Yeah. Georgia. No. If I were Georgia, I'd get a real quarterback once.
They don't. I don't think they. I think they're good.
I was gonna say they don't need it. The thing is, they're fine.
That's true. They are good. Boy, man, what they did to Florida State, that should not be legal. That Florida State thing, that really, all their fans. Listen, I know you're upset that you didn't get in the playoff. You should probably try in the bowl game. You should probably not allow 70 points before halftime in the bowl game.
Oh my gosh, is that real? Wait, that's not real.
I think it was 42-3 at halftime.
Oh, man. I do remember it being a gross game. By the way, Trey Benson, if I can, second in Pro Football Focus's breakaway rate last season and 16th in elusive rate, so pretty good. Not great at breaking tackles, it turns out. But all the running back data crunching I was doing, guys, it kept bringing me back to a fella named Audric Estime.
Yep, and it turns out he's just slow as hell.
Turns out he's slow, but I would suggest you guys watch the game tape. That's all I have to say.
We will watch the game.
I don't think in the past 10 years there's been a running back to run a 4.7 and put like meaningful fantasy numbers up. And the guys who kind of maybe fit the bill are like Darrell Williams and Rex Burkhead and like Matt Asiata, like true like utility guys who hang out on an NFL team until everyone gets hurt.
How did this happen?
Dude, my guy Cody Schrader even got under 4.7.
How did this happen?
Oh, I haven't seen. Wait, was it bad though? Was it 4.6s?
It was in the 4.6s.
Dang! I actually really like Schrader as a prospect, but I don't think anyone else is in on him.
No, I think the league will be in on him. See, he's going to be he'll be a 7th round pick. I don't think he'll go undrafted. I think someone will want to get him on their roster.
It's a very generous use of the term. The league will be in on him. 7th round pick.
They won't want him to be an undrafted free. There's going to be someone who wants him enough to use a draft.
I hope so.
Is what I'm saying. Man, I really hope so too. Amazing story. LSU wide receiver Brian Thomas, 4.3, 4.40 at 6'2". The big receiver is back, Kyle. Is that what we're hearing?
This is a great draft. Last draft was a terrible draft for the big receiver. There were good prospects, but all of them were marginally taller than me. I could have a reasonable conversation with them and not feel embarrassed. I cannot hang out with Brian Thomas or Marvin Harrison and not feel embarrassed by my meager size, which is a great thing. So we want the big receiver to be back, but not only is the big receiver back in terms of, I think Malik Neighbors didn't test, Marvin Harrison didn't test, but in terms of the top guys, they all appear to be extremely athletic. So yeah, I think Brian Thomas almost certainly flipped Troy Franklin, who not everyone had Thomas ahead of Franklin anyways, but at this point, Franklin, who came in very slight, it's like 170s and didn't run super fast, super productive out of Oregon. But that size, given the depth of this class, he probably tumbled back. I think it's very reasonable to have Brian Thomas as the wide receiver 4. Not only that, but in a class that is stacked with wide receivers, 4 is a big compliment.
Denny, any thoughts there? We have to move on to our absolute freak, Penn State tight end Theo Johnson.
Just say the era of the big receiver is over, and I've come to accept that. And
no, it's restarting. It's like everything big is going to be back. With teams are tired of the safeties. They're gonna. Defense is just begging you to run. Teams are going to start running again.
Within 5 years. No, I reject all of that. Within 5 years, every receiver will be Tutu Atwell.
See, I'm on board with you rejecting half of it with the running coming back. I don't know how much of a comeback that'll make, but I do think like if you can have, I think the big receiver who runs a 4.3, that dude has a place in the NFL. The big receiver who's Kelvin Benjamin, which this class might have one. I don't know what that guy's place in the NFL is given the speed of the game, but if you can just be a giant and also be superhuman fast, that guy's going to be highly coveted.
Yeah, you can't Kelvin Benjamin. You can't. Who's that guy on the Patriots? N'Keal Harry.
Oh, Harry.
You can't Quentin Johnston.
Can't J.J. Arcega-Whiteside.
But if you're blazing under 4.4, you should be fired if you can't figure out how to use that, basically. Theo Johnson, a 9.99 relative athletic score out of 10.0, Kyle. Is this guy, wow, was he like a real prospect or is he just some fast guy?
No, he's like a 20% final dominator, 4-year play, I believe 4 years at Penn State. Tight end is not a position in which production matters the most. It's probably the most athleticism driven position in terms of NFL success that we care about in terms of like fantasy skill position type of stuff. And he wasn't completely unproductive, but I will say, we say athleticism matters a lot. And you look at all of the top tight ends in the NFL, they're mostly all athletic, but most of them are good NFL or good college producers as well. Obviously, that's a relative measure because tight ends just don't produce a lot in college. And all of them played at Iowa, who throws for 400 yards in a season. You get 100 yards in a season, that's a 25% dominator right there. So, like, literally, a bunch of them did play for Iowa. So they had like 600 yards, and you're like, oh, that was half of the team's passing yards. That's pretty impressive. Kittle and Laporta both did. So, and
Hawkinson also.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, Hawkinson.
They worked out. I will say Theo Johnson caught my attention in the old spreadsheet because hardly anyone in all of college football had a worse yards per route run last year.
Oh no.
Hardly anyone.
He's going to be a mega bust. That's fine. Someone has to be.
He might just not get drafted super high though. Like last year, I think Zach Kuntz set the all-time RAS score just barely above Theo Johnson this year, and he went like day 3 and didn't play a snap as a rookie.
I mean, look, Theo Johnson ran 265 routes last year at Penn State. He had 41 targets. That's a low rate. My guy was not commanding targets, is what I would say.
He wasn't commanding targets. We hope we were commanding your attention. We went 62 minutes. They said it couldn't be done. It was done. We're going to do it again on Thursday when Kyle and Denny will both be back. There's going to be a lot of news. So we're going to be on the eve of free agency then. Denny and I are going to have a free agency primer out. We're not entirely sure what we're going to talk about Thursday. We know it's going to be relevant to you and your upcoming fantasy teams, though. So for Kyle, for Denny, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back later this week.